Thank you so much, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us for today's events. Problem at the polls, election administration in the midterms. My name is Archon Funk. This is a weird, does this sound okay? It's a little funky. And I am the director of the Ash Center for Democratic Governance and Innovation here at the Kennedy School, and I am also a member of the faculty. I wanted to start with a few announcements on behalf of the Ash Center. First, we would like to acknowledge the land on which Harvard sits as the traditional territory of the Massachusetts people and a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among nations. This panel is being live streamed and recorded, which means that all remarks need to be spoken into a microphone, which I'm trying to do right now. During the Q&A, we'll take a few questions first from our virtual audience, and then we'll take some questions from our in-person audience. If you have a question at that time, raise your hand, either your real hand or your virtual hand, and a staff member will get you to the microphone if you're in the room, and otherwise call you on the webinar. This recording will be made available on the Ash Center's YouTube channel shortly after the event. We'd like to acknowledge and thank our co-sponsors for today's discussion, the Institute of Politics here at Harvard and the Harvard Kennedy School's Black Alumni Association. I'd like to welcome members of the BAA who are joining us today virtually, and thank you very much for your collaboration. The midterm elections are just 2 weeks away, and there is much speculation about particular races and nationally whether the Democrats or the Republicans will end up controlling the House and or the Senate. Today, though, we are going to focus on a more fundamental questions about the safety, integrity, and operation of the midterm elections themselves. This is the first national election since the convulsions of January 6, 2020. Something like 3 in 10 Americans do not believe that Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election legitimately, and there are dozens, maybe hundreds of candidates running for office who deny the conclusions of that election. Will they respect the results in 2022? All across America, there are fights not just about who to vote for, but who will be able to vote and how, about vote by mail, about the hours that polling places will be open, and about eligibility. And then, of course, there are concerns about the safety, security, and independence of the many thousands of Americans who will be doing the basic work of running the elections. A few months ago, I was in Madison, Wisconsin, and for those of you who follow elections closely, you'll know that in Wisconsin, the elections are run by the clerks, town clerks of local government, and I was fortunate enough to have a meeting with some of the town clerks in Madison, Wisconsin, and my friend who organized the meeting said, you know, this is going to be great. Madison was an important place for the 2020 elections, but in this meeting, do not ask or talk about political violence or any kind of violence, because these people had and their families had received so many threats, and through email, through voice, through the regular mail, through social media to themselves and their families, that they were suffering a kind of post-2020 election trauma. It's really remarkable. These are not people who are in high offices like Secretary of State. They signed up to collect the water bills and decide who gets the sewer and trash contract, and they happen to run an election every other year, and this is what they're going through. And it's not just them, it's people all over America, as we know. We have a couple of great speakers to address these and other questions. Moderating the discussion is Tova Wang. Tova was most recently Director of Policy and Research at the Center for Secure and Modern Elections, where she worked on voter registration reform and conducted research on how to develop strategies to increase political participation among disengaged groups. She has 20 years of experience working on improving democracy in many areas, including for several years as a senior democracy fellow at Demos. And now we are very fortunate to have her as a senior practice fellow in American democracy at the Ash Center. Her critically acclaimed book, The Politics of Voter Suppression, Defending and Expanding Americans' Right to Vote, was published in 2012 by Cornell University Press. Joining Tova is Natalie Tennant, who served 8 years as West Virginia's elected Secretary of State, where she earned a well-deserved reputation as an innovative and visionary leader and a pioneer in election administration, public sector business development, and financial accountability. Natalie now consults for the Brennan Center for Justice at the New York University School of Law, where she was also manager of state advocacy for voting rights and elections. She is a nationally recognized voting rights leader and helped expand and influence voter registration opportunities in states all across the country. Thank you very much for joining us, Natalie, and let me turn it over to Tova.
Thank you, Archon, and thanks for giving that backdrop. You will maybe be able to tell during this that Natalie and I have met before. So I will call you Natalie. That's okay.
Fine. Yep.
Secretary Tennant. We were just, before we came on, kind of reminiscing about, we must have met at least 5 or 6 years ago. I went down to Charleston, West Virginia for the first time. And I was there to meet with you for a moment, but then to meet with your director of elections and all the county commissioners in West Virginia, as well as the Department of Motor Vehicles, but they never showed up any of the times that I came. Yeah, I was there working on automatic voter registration and trying to work on automatic voter registration policies around the country. And so I could see firsthand what you were up against when you were doing your work as Secretary of State. So I wanted to just start out asking you to tell us a little bit about your background and what was that was like, and how you got into that position, and what it was like for those 8 years in, a very red state.
Yeah, I mean, and it was 2016. I do remember being in this meeting and I turn around like, oh, you're Tova. Jonathan Brader was beside you from the Brennan Center at the time too. And I think a couple times I turned around and looked at you like, see.
Right.
Well, it's interesting about West Virginia because you first look now at the state, and yes, it is very red. It's a supermajority for the Republican Party in the legislature, and all the statewide offices except for one U.S. senator is Republican. But it wasn't always that way. And I was elected in 2008, and I started in 2009. And my party had the majority at that time. And so when I went in your first budget hearing, it was a fairly friendly audience. And at the time, you also, as your first legislative session as elected official, you get that little honeymoon period too. So I had a little bit of honeymoon period with my party in charge. And what I did then was I pushed for technology funding, technology resources, and I had some things in mind. And as Archon said, I pushed a lot of business streamlining of businesses, because the Secretary of State's office registers businesses in West Virginia, and I really wanted to see that. And I continued to push for any extra funding that was possible, but also the authority to spend it. And when they would ask, well, what are you going to use this for? And I'd say, well, I don't know yet, but I know that there'll be technology advances coming along, so I want to be ready for them. And so that's what we had good years fairly getting those resources. And within those years, like online voter registration was I want to say passed, but wasn't it already required in 1993 with the NVRA, National Voter Registration Act of 93? And it meant that when you go to like the DMV, you only have to fill out one piece of paper, and that's what the online part would have done. So we got that. We got that through, and think back. Here's Natalie saving money, and I can remember speaking. This was a former DMV commissioner. He was a commissioner at the time, and he said, "Oh, this sounds really good, Natalie. I think we might be able to put this together. But my vendor tells me that it'll cost $33,000." And I was like, "I'll pay for it. Can we do it? I will pay for it." And like I was like, big spender then. $33,000 is great to be able to implement an electronic transfer between the two of them, the two agencies, the DMV and the Secretary of State's office. And so we were able to do a lot of those innovative and forward-thinking ideas. Just as simple as as simple as online. It wasn't simple at the time, but it certainly is now. 7, 8 years later. And then The majority changed in 2014. And at that time period, then that became the time where, you're going to have to work bipartisanly. And that's what I did for businesses. For example, I worked with legislators across the aisle, and we implemented a waiver system where veterans could get their annual report or their startup fee waived along with annual report waived. So there was bipartisan support. So we had this good working relationship. And then that's just one of many things. But in 2016, we'll get to this time when Tova arrives on scene in West Virginia. In 2016, see, all along, even when the Democratic Party had the majority, all along the Republican Party wanted to implement voter ID. And we were able to kind of just hold them back, because I always felt that there was identification. When you go and sign, you're checking that identification. And according to the Help America Vote Act, you have to have some form of ID if you didn't initially give it. So there was ID always presented to get registered to vote. And they'd always been pushing it. Well, now they were in charge. And they didn't do it in 2014. They didn't pass voter ID. It came up in 2016. And in 2016, they had this voter ID bill that had a lot of what I'll call, especially when you compare it to other states, I'll call sensible requirements. You could use your Social Security card. You could use your bank debit card. You could use your Medicaid card. You could use a whole list of cards, and it wasn't photo. And the reason that was the possibility, because remember, there were former Democrats who were the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So when there would be a suggestion on what would be in the bill, well, then they would put something in, and then they would come back. Well, it turns out that we get automatic voter registration as a fair, even balance when they're pushing voter ID. Like, where do you hear that happening? It was like they wanted voter ID so badly that they gave us automatic voter registration, automated voter registration. So, that's the back and forth. I think if I were Secretary of State now in 2022, it wouldn't have been like that, probably, because there's just a whole lot. They have a super majority and they don't have to listen to the other side at all. And we've seen that in some cases. So it was a bipartisan piece of legislation for automatic voter registration. The governor at the time was a Democrat, wasn't sure what he was supposed to do with it. And I ran to him, like, no, you have to sign this bill. You have to sign this bill. And then you saw Tova was there. It was, we formed a committee with county clerks, with party officials from all 4 parties that are recognized in West Virginia, from League of Women Voters, from advocacy groups, from national groups as well, to work on writing the rules. And we had the rules written. Well, then the fall of 2016 comes around and I lose the election. And after that, there was a push to repeal automatic voter registration. There were one to repeal it, one to delay it, and it was delayed for many years, like about 4 years, actually.
But so it sounds like during the time that you were there, you got out almost just in time, because it was during that period, it was maybe the last time that you could work on something together with people in the other party and actually make something happen. I can't imagine that happening now in West Virginia, or frankly any place else. And now, the environment is such that I don't think that there's any coming together anywhere. And I wonder what you think it would be like if you were in a Secretary of State position, whether in West Virginia or anywhere else right now. I mean, what are these people going through right now?
That's a really good question. I would like to think that, sometimes position gives someone by other people a whole lot of credit, as if you're more knowledgeable because you're in the position, but that's not necessarily the case. I mean, I could think of a couple things. Well, first, let me go back in 2021, and there was a piece of legislation, and it was very harsh. It wanted to repeal automatic voter registration. It wanted to shift the most popular early voting days, shift it from what was the most popular early voting days back. It was trying to purge in an earlier time period than 4 years down to 2 years. And because we formed a coalition, that they did not expect that. The majority and the county clerks who were for this, who were for changing the ways of 20 years of early voting, they were for changing that. They didn't expect this, they didn't anticipate this coming together of a coalition. So we were able to get that bill stopped. How would it have worked? I wouldn't have been for that bill as Secretary of State, unlike the current Secretary of State was for that. So maybe a few lawmakers would be like, doesn't make sense, and I would show them why it wouldn't make sense. The second thing is, we were just talking about the national For the People Act, and then it became Freedom to Vote Act. I think that in West Virginia, the Secretary of State was against it. He was able to get a lot of county clerks against it, who I talked to personally, who did not even read the bill. But that's what would have been different. I would have been a
That
different
would have been
voice.
very different.
I know, I might have been, I might have been
In
a
West
minority
Virginia, Joe
voice.
Manchin being,
Exactly, right. I would have been a minority voice, but I would have been a voice.
Right.
I mean, and we did it. I mean, we were still, even this coalition group, many of the people, the Citizens Action Group, League of Women Voters, so many young groups, NAACP, working together in West Virginia to try and convince Joe Manchin to pass Freedom to Vote Act. We were a voice, but it just
So,
wasn't enough.
I assume that you keep up with some of your colleagues, former colleagues, or at least you read about them. What are you thinking about some of the people who are running for Secretary of State this year and what's going on in Secretary of State's elections?
Same thing you guys are. I mean, except, we do have here's some of my close friends, Nellie Gorbea is term limited, Jim Condos in Rhode Island, Vermont. Jim Condos is retiring. I can't believe the guy's going to be 71 years old. He's like, Natalie, I am 71, going to be 71. Like, you can hang in there. Denise Merrill
Right.
from Connecticut, retired early for family. I mean, she's taking care of her husband. She said that out. Some other folks, like we do have Steve Simon in Minnesota, but he's running against. I mean, are we going to tag what these people are? They're election deniers.
Yeah,
I mean, they are election
that's
deniers.
what I'm hoping to talk about, Natalie. It's like, let's talk about,
Well, yeah,
Nevada
I mean,
and New Mexico and Arizona,
yeah, I'll
and
get Michigan also.
yeah, and Michigan.
They look in strong position. Yeah, we're worried the heck out of Arizona with Mark Fincham, who is an election denier, says that he would not have approved or certified the election in 2020. And look what he's doing even now. Like, because we're worried about Secretary of State races. They can't really, these election deniers can't control the 2020 election in terms of certifying, and neither can a governor. But it's 2024 that we're worried about, and the presidential race. I mean, do you know what he's doing? And probably what he's going to cause me to do? He's telling his supporters to get on an app called Votify.
This is Mark Fincham.
Yes, in Arizona. In Arizona. To get on an app called Votify and to use it to watch people go vote, take pictures of them, take pictures of their license plate. Yeah, it's really scary. And so,
Wow.
we're always ready to stand up against if there's been a group of people who've had this. And so that, I mean, we don't have to think about what he's going to do. We know what he's going to do.
Right.
And how do you convince the people in Arizona to say this isn't right? Or Carrie Lake, I know we're not talking about a secretary, she's running for governor, who says that the primary, she comes out a week before and says the primary, there's fraud going on unless I win. And then she wins the primary and they say, well, where's this evidence? Oh, I have this evidence. And the reporters ask her, well, show it to us. I'm not going to show it to you. You're fake news. Like, I mean, and she's a former news reporter of 27 years. She's one of them. So do you see how it's like your mind just can't believe? So that's happening in Arizona,
Right.
and that's huge. Um, you know, where you saw all of the, you know, we don't even like to call it an audit, do we? We don't even like to call it a fraudit, right, Lisa?
Fraudit,
We're not
right.
even allowed to call it a fraudit. It was just a big, you know, waste of money. Then you have Nevada, where in 2020, the Republican Secretary of State, Barbara Shagafsky, is term limited. She's not running. So it's a brand new open seat. And Jim Marchant, I say Marchant, it's Marchant is an election denier who says he wouldn't have certified the 2020 election. And, you know, so we don't know what he would do in 2024. And then also what's happening in Nevada, we have right now, not just Secretary of State races, but county clerk races. Like there's so much pressure put on these county clerks who are standing up against their county commissions who want to take the machines away. Like in Nye County, she resigned. They appointed someone who said, we want paper ballots and hand counting. And we know that it's not as accurate, it's not as timely. So imagine, like, you're caught in between. If you don't have the results on election night, then what do people say? Oh,
Right.
I mean, what are they saying? Oh, well, they're finding new votes, everything. Well, you're not going to have it on election night. Even if you're necessarily using the machine to count, because they're never official on election night, because you do have provisional ballots and ballots that come in later in many states. And so then they may not get them counted. So it's like they're saying, we can't trust the machines, but we're going to do this, which might muck up the system anyway.
Actually, I'm going to stick with this, you know, calling out the Secretary of State candidates and Secretaries of States, but I do wonder if there isn't a lot going on right now to start building the case to declare victory on election night and have tons of paper left over so that actually we don't know who won on election night, but to make it seem as if, and then if it changes, the election was stolen. And that there's just a lot going on right now to try and build for that.
Right,
happen.
if it's a close race, that makes, I see what you're saying, that makes sense. If
So
you
whatever
heard-
the count is on election night, that's who won, even if there are hundreds of thousands of ballots still to be counted.
Right, and that's what people need to remember, that that folks like to say they changed the results. No, they didn't. They counted ballots. That's just what it's called. It's like, you know, like I'll give you an example. In 2020, I was winning after the first results came out. Well, we should have stopped then. I should have declared victory. Like it was amazing. But they didn't change anything. They just counted the rest of the votes.
And you stood for that.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, yes, but then I lost by more than I did 4 years ago. So it's
Oh,
like,
well.
but that's the thing. Like there's a guy in, what's his name? Joey Gilbert, who ran for governor in Nevada in the primary. He lost by 23,000 votes and he still asked for a recount.
Yeah.
And it didn't change anything. And he still thinks he won. So getting back to that follow-up question on that is my concern.
Yeah.
That you're gonna make all of this. I mean, it's everything. Like it's almost as if the truth and the facts can't win because you keep changing how we're going to state them.
Right.
I mean, that's what it feels like. The example is Carrie Lake. Like, you know, okay, if it wasn't fraudulent, but you still say there was fraud in it, well, let's see it. Well, I'm not going to show it to you, not you.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's worrisome. I guess you have so Nevada, New Mexico, Michigan.
New Mexico, yeah, I know it's a focus, and Maggie Toulouse Oliver, we know how she'll react to things, because here's already an example of what a county tried to do. Otero,
This is the Secretary of State of New Mexico is really excellent,
yes,
but
yes,
the person running against her is not so excellent.
yes. I haven't looked at that.
Yeah.
I haven't
maybe
paid as
I'm
much
wrong.
of attention, but
I
I
could
think you're
be
right, because that's the fifth. Because I'm like
Confused by
the fifth state, but I also throw Indiana in there.
Mhm.
Because Indiana, you would think there's no chance, but a woman who's an Army, I don't think she's a veteran, I think she's still on active duty, is running, and she's running against a gentleman who was fired from the Secretary of State's office, who is an election denier, maybe softening a little bit his approach. But here's what happened in New Mexico with Maggie Toulouse Oliver during a primary election. Ontario County, I don't think I'm pronouncing it right. Otero County did not want to count did not want to use the machines to count the election and therefore would not certify them.
Right.
And I even, when I saw her, I'm like, did they use these machines before? She's like, yes. But now the machines aren't good enough. The same machines that were used for them to get elected. And she took them straight to court. Like, she didn't fool around, and they were forced to count those ballots.
But you brought up in passing a little bit something else, which is the county level people who are in charge and all the more local positions, that there's been a lot of sort of strategizing around and elections and trying to get certain people in place and kick other people out of also at the local level, which is another concern, right?
Yeah. I mean, in Nevada, for instance, they did do some hand counts. Can't remember which county it is, and they barely made the deadline. And the smaller counties seem easier, but Nye County, I think, is like a county of 33,000 voters. Tell me how long it's going to take to hand count that. And then that becomes my worry. It's like, oh, well, they're not counted, and people will say, oh, there's something wrong with the system. Elections can't be trusted.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in motion to make people question what happens on November 8th. Let me just turn for a minute to back in the old days, we would only be fighting about the actual laws and voter suppression rather than physical violence to have,
Right.
have
Right, and
to win an
physicalness being
election.
out and about. Yeah,
Yeah, and death threats and stuff. We were just talking about actually what was going on in the legislature. So I do want to talk about that though for a second, because certainly having worked at the Brennan Center and so on, you're aware of a lot of new restrictive laws that have been passed that actually in some ways it's gotten lost in all of the reporting, I think, around threats to elections officials. I mean, which is rightly so, but also the legislation that was passed in Georgia and in Texas and in a number of other places that, is also gonna have a role in all this on election day and beyond.
I don't even know where to start. I even had to write them down because where these restrictive laws came from were, I'm not sure you would say a counter or because with the big lie and saying that there were all these problems. So then they had legislation that would be formed, like Senate Bill 202 in Georgia. That was like, a well-known popular bill. And people want to say, oh, you can't give water. That's, I mean, I know that's really bad, but that's
the
nothing.
problem.
That is nothing
Right.
compared to expanding the rights of partisan poll watchers, like to be able to observe. That's a bad one. The ability to have drop boxes. Like, people like drop boxes, especially during, 2020 was COVID. I mean, do we like drop boxes for our mail, or do we like to have to get out and go in and find a parking space and go in? Like, we like that. But when you start to limit that availability and restrict the access to mail-in voting, like, we can look at the difference by saying have stricter identification for absentee voters. Like, an example would be, I've asked for mine. If I had to also send a copy of an ID, like, I would have the wherewithal, wouldn't I? I'd be able to go, and I don't even know where there is a copy machine here. I guess upstairs, right?
Oh, see, now
Oh,
who would have thought of that?
See, Elizabeth, I would not have thought of that. Like, I'm
Can
worried.
you out there in TV land
Yeah.
hear what we've been told? You can take a picture.
Elizabeth, one of our IOP students, were taking, duh. I mean, I thought, I did not think about.
That didn't happen. Let's keep going.
I was totally like, where am I gonna go for the copy machine?
I'm with
And then
you.
you send it, and then you send it. So they've made it stricter. to not be able to do that. That's in Georgia. And then also taking the ability away, like it's even gone down, like that was a statewide law. Then there are county bills, like I think in 8 counties, where they are taking the authority away from the county board of elections and putting it to the legislature.
Right.
So that even board that was, nonpartisan.
But
Doesn't get
explain
them.
a little bit more about what the problem with that is of this sort of, takeover of the control over county boards.
It goes then to the takeover of county boards, then you don't have that even bipartisan view of something. And then it would go to the legislature, where the legislature would sit here and decide, oh, we're so close, we have this many, this is how many one side has, and this is how many the other side has. They would then determine an election.
The legislature rather than the bipartisan
Right,
county
right.
commission.
Right, the bipartisan county board. Yes.
And that's in some of this legislation too, right? Is that what you're?
Yes, that was
Yeah,
in
and-
one of the Georgia
Right. that's
pieces
in
of
one the-
legislation.
Right. So that, yeah, that's
Yeah, I
right.
keep talking
Almost
about
forgot
tool
about
too.
that. Wow.
Right, right. Which then, and then you have Texas,
Right.
which did away with the drive-by voting, not just drive-by drop boxes, but drive-by voting. And what Texas did, we've already seen from the March primary in Texas, where the rejection rate of getting your ballot, like I look around the room and I see so many people who have had to mail in your ballot. I mean,
Sure.
I'm having to vote in. I just took a picture of 3 different states, 3 different ballots of students who were me and 2 other students who were getting ready to mail our ballots. And so imagine if we send them, it gets to West Virginia and it's rejected. Well, that's what's happened in Texas, like a 12% rejection rate.
Because
It
they
was-
had all sorts of new requirements.
Right, and exactly.
Associated with mailing in your ballot to,
Yes,
I guess, make it harder.
and it hit communities of color the most, and the Asian community among those. I mean, there's a new report. I'm not gonna, but the Brennan Center has a new report out. Kevin and Corin
Yeah.
did a new report about who it hits the hardest.
Yeah.
And in these pieces of legislation also.
And it's
if
young
it's a-
people usually
Uh-huh.
too, young people
Yeah.
get hit. So, yeah, I really do feel like some of the restrictive bills that were passed right after 2020 and we were all very upset about have gotten now. That seems like not the concern. It's almost because the actual threats to elections officials and to the entire system are
Right,
really what
around every little corner. And
Yeah.
the thing that gets me, it's like 2020 was a great election, right? So now things that voters were able to do in 2020, they're not able to do now in Georgia, in Texas, in Florida, in West Virginia. While it wasn't a piece of legislation, no excuse absentee voting was very popular in West Virginia during COVID, because you could just ask for it and say it was COVID. So it was engaging. Voters liked it. Why can't we have it now? Like, why would you change it?
Why would they change it?
As I think this would be fair to say. I mean, when you process the early ones, I mean, look at how the evening, I just told you when the evening of election day, who was winning when the
Right.
first ballots came out.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, that's, I don't know if it's fair, but there has to be,
Yeah.
but why wouldn't you? And here's what I say about West Virginia, that we have the same issues as many, I won't say that. We have transportation restraints. And if you could get a ballot sent to you, I call it you living your life by catching a ride. You catch a ride to the doctor's office, you catch a ride to the grocery store, you catch a ride to go do business or paperwork, because we don't have public transportation that's really good. Some people don't have reliable cars. So if you're catching a ride for all of this, chances are you're going to have to catch a ride to the polling place.
Right.
And if you did, like I'm pushing a lot of same day voter registration. If you didn't have if you only had one ride you could catch, wouldn't same-day voter registration be great? You could get registered and vote that same day. Okay, well, we don't have that. Well, why not be able to get a ballot mailed to you? How come I was able to get one mailed up here? Oh, well, I'm out of state. Okay, but they sent one up here and it sent it back prepaid. Why can't somebody like my dad up on a farm who's 94, like he's still like, because he's of age, is that the way they phrase it? As a certain, as of a certain age, like he's 94, he's gonna get a ballot, but why can't
Yeah.
somebody else up the hall get it too,
Yeah, yeah,
without having an excuse?
yeah. I'm not clear on it
When
either.
it worked fine for the COVID election, 2020 election.
That's right, yes. Although there might be fraud that we don't know about. Anyway,
But that's what makes these things so bad, is
Yeah.
that they're taking something away.
yeah,
Well, I mean, we know what it's like getting things taken away now.
I'm gonna spend just a minute more talking about bad things, and then maybe we can find some good things to talk about too. But so what is your impression of all of these threats? I mean, Archon told us the story of what he heard about in Wisconsin, and I think a lot of us, but I mean, I've been following also. They're getting security training from the Department of Homeland Security.
Right? CISA sending out
Yeah,
the
I mean, it-
cyber and infrastructure security agency.
They're-
right.
they're doing this. There are already been cases of voter intimidation at ballot boxes, which seems to be a focus. Surveillance anyway, and so obviously we know that since 2020, local elections officials, and now I think to some extent poll workers even, are getting threats, and they're taking security really, really seriously.
Well, yeah, I mean, first poll workers, we had, is it Miss Ruby and her grandmother or her
right.
grandmother? And well, we saw that in Georgia, and that was identified during the January 6th committee. The other intimidation is now taking place. You referenced it, drop boxes. They call them drop box parties. And I'm like,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm up for a party anytime. We're celebrating democracy.
Right.
But what's happening is when a voter comes to drop off, there are people who are armed in fatigue gear, camouflage, yeah, fatigues. And they're sitting out there. Like there's video now. I saw it on CBS News yesterday.
Yeah.
So it's like, are you going to go drop them off now? There's also intimidation when there are people in Arizona and Texas. They're going door to door,
Right.
like canvassing. Like canvassing's a good thing, right? Isn't that what candidates do? I'm meeting people face to face. Well, there are people going door to door, knocking on the door and saying, Elizabeth, did you vote this last election? And she'll say yes. And they'll say, well, do you live here? Yes. Anybody else live here? Like intimidating questions. And do you intend to vote? And then some even like having them sign an affidavit. Like, do you think she's going to go again next time? She doesn't want someone she doesn't know showing up at her door. So those are intimidation processes. Then we have the training of partisan poll workers. So I was a poll worker the last primary election. I just figured, I was always asking people to be a poll worker. I can be a poll worker this time. And the training, I mean, it could have been used, it could have been a little bit more training. Yes, it probably was not fair. Can you imagine being the county clerk and you're doing your training and sitting there as the former Secretary of State? Like she was a little like, because I kind of knew, like I knew the overall, but not all the nitty gritty. I hadn't been a poll worker in 20 some years.
You probably knew just enough to be dangerous.
Yes, right. But I didn't know, like I didn't know all the paperwork that,
Yeah.
like, and it would be like, where's the Republican poll worker here? We can't do anything. Like we were like hand in hand, like here, let's both make sure we read this. We were on it. And so it's like you have partisan people who want you to be able to take pictures, who want you to challenge what somebody else is doing. So imagine if the other people who were poll workers with my Republican friend and I, who were working so hard, then they come and, question what we're doing. So that's intimidating also. And of course, the intimidation of election officials. There have been, as I said, there's a concern about insider threats, which the physical security would help. But what is being recommended for election officials who get threats are like be part of or allow to use the address confidentiality program that states allow. And what that is, it's really for victims of domestic violence and stalking where their address is not shown anywhere because voting information is public record. Well, that wouldn't be shown for your voter, for your poll workers. Have extra security in terms of camera, have parking spots that don't indicate who's parking there. Those are just some of the different types of security measures being taken, like anti-doxing. Like, I don't really there's training for anti-doxing, meaning your documents, right? You don't want to be doxed. My fear, like everybody knows everything about me anyway, like I put it out myself. And it's like, where would I go to protect myself? I would go up on the farm and, see if anybody wants to come up on the farm with, my brothers who are up there. It's the best I got but you can't, because you have to be conducting the election.
Right. Well,
So-
I'm gonna turn it over to questions in just a second. I just want you to just find one thing for us that good that has happened.
Oh,
Because
well-
I mean, yeah, there have been some of the things that were enacted in 2020 actually we
that's what I was going to
remain.
say. The
Yeah.
2020 election was an excellent thing. When you say it's the most well-run, it's the most secure, the highest turnout in 100 years, that was great. And I think, Haley, you're up here, aren't you? No, that must not be Haley. It looks like her. Haley. So she asked me in one of my study groups, what do you see in the future? And I said, well, I see what we did in 2020. The unfortunate part, this is 2020. We should be clear up here, but we're having to fight the things. So we're going backward instead of forward. So I think those are positive. What can take place? We have to get election officials in who respect the process, who aren't always, I mean, like, I thought we had to be good sports. Like, did none of these people who are running for office ever in sports where it's like, you lost, let's go, get practice for the next time? I mean, that's why sports is good for girls and boys.
That's right.
So that, I think, those are a positive if we get it. And I think the other positive is too, the polls kind of changed. Back in August, there was a poll, an NBC poll that said people were more concerned about the threat to democracy than they were the economy. Well, now it's back the economy
Right.
first and democracy second. I mean,
Right.
have we ever seen that before? As I look at some of my, fellow advocates here, had democracy ever been on a poll? Maybe it was never asked.
No.
People ever thought about it.
Yeah. We
So I
took it
think
for
that's a
granted.
positive thing too. And I think, coming into the future, I ask the students all the time, like, what do we say? How do we work and change this? And I was on a webinar and it showed when we talk affirmatively about our elections, like we're still the example of elections around the world that we, are you proud of being able to have the freedoms to vote? And if we could talk like that, we could agree on things more. So that's the way we're just going to have to change but it's hard. You got to identify what the problem is and fight it. And that's the problem right now is
And keep
they're
fighting,
attacking.
and
I know you
be
have.
resilient. Be
Yeah.
resilient. Well, I'm gonna go to questions now. I think we're gonna first go to Annette, who is joining us. She's from the Harvard Kennedy School Black Alumni Association. If you want to introduce yourself for a second, Annette, and then some questions from the people online.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
Yes, there I am. Hello, everyone. I am Annette Reguette, MPP 94 from the Kennedy School and Vice President of the Kennedy School Black Alumni Association. And we are very happy to co-sponsor this event with the Ash Center. So, Tova, would you like for me to launch into a question right away?
Yeah,
or?
do it. Go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. I just wish we had more time. I have to tell you, Secretary Tennant, thank you so much for being here. It's been just thrilling hearing all of your deep knowledge and your passion for clean elections and voter rights. So thank you for being with us today. I'd like to pick up on something that Director Fung said at the very beginning, which is that I think it's 3 out of 10 people do not accept the results of the 2020 presidential election. So the question I have for you, the first is, we've identified a lot of the problems. So what would be some of the solutions, not just, how we combat structural barriers, but also the cynicism around government and the integrity of elections?
That's a really good question, because that's the avenue that we need to take. And I think first off is transparency. And as I said, again, I think people are more aware of the voting process. They think they know more about it, but you certainly can. We're 2 weeks out from the election. Early voting has started in many states, but there's also still opportunities for the public to see how the process of machines, or how the process is run, meaning that they can go to a county clerk's office and watch them do the LNA testing, which is logistics and accuracy. So they have, I don't want to say fake ballots, mock ballots. Like that, just, you can't
Don't
use
go
that
there.
word. You have mock ballots where you're running it through and making sure that you know how they voted on here, and then you run it through the machine. So there is that public opportunity for people to see. I think that there are some counties that may do it live, like a webinar. I think that all counties should. We'll probably be getting to that more and more. So that's one way for people to see. And it's interesting. I hear a lot of people say, well, just be a poll worker. And we think there might be some changes, like in someone's mind, if they saw what a poll worker is required to do, that you're getting up at 4 a.m. or earlier and getting there by 4:30 or 5 o'clock and setting all of this up. Now, we certainly don't want the partisan poll workers. We want you to listen to the election official who's training you. So that's another way to open it up and make it more transparent. I think working, I'll say, I have a colleague back here, Lisa Dance, who she and I work in several different states, and we are also working with the media. We've had webinars in Arizona, Nevada. We're getting ready for one in New Hampshire, and it's like a backgrounder briefing for the media. And if the media has it right, maybe they can then explain. So I just think that there's ways to explain. There's, in Wisconsin, the State Board of Elections, they put out this whole list of here's what you can anticipate. Jocelyn Benson was at one of my study groups a couple weeks ago, and she said, we're just telling people. She even said that, she said, I told you all in 2020 that we were going to still be counting elections. So people need to understand that. They need to understand why you don't get an official count on election night. So that are some ways to help people not be so cynical. And I think probably saying in a positive way, we still are the best country in the world. We can't be fake about it, but really talk about why. And I'm always open to suggestions, Annette, because you have great resources and you have technicals out there of people who experience some of this. Does anybody have other ideas? It can't always come from election officials or advocates. We have to see how people are on the ground.
So in other words, what are your solutions?
Yeah.
I'd be sitting where you are if I had the answers to that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. So if you don't mind, I'm going to give you maybe a two-part question to follow up with what you just said about, not getting results on election night. And that is, we have a couple of our audience members have inquired about the accuracy of machine voting versus hand counts. And so sort of the follow-up, the two-part to that is a question here that I'll put together with submitted by Vanessa Merton. And she asks, isn't accuracy and confidence in the validity of results far more important than speed? And isn't the better approach to re-educate the public not to expect instant results and to understand that in order to be inclusive, we have different types of ballots and it takes time to count them accurately? And why should exhausted election workers be trying to process multiple inputs late into the night or the next morning if statutory deadlines need to be slightly extended, then what's wrong with that?
Good question.
She answered it. She's right about all of that. Yes, accuracy and I guess accountability, I think was that. Yes, it's almost, I'm a former television reporter and it was always, it's the same thing. You're going to be first in reporting it or do you want to be accurate? Well, you want to be accurate and then be first as fast as you can. Going back with the accuracy of machines versus hand count, there are reports and research done, and I just read one, and I can't think of what one of the organizations who did it, but just say that machines are more accurate and than hand count. And here's an example. This I told you about Nye County, Nevada, where he wants to do these hand counts, and the Secretary of State there says, okay, we can't. You have to follow all of these. You cannot have 8 hours. You cannot have a team working for no more than 8 hours. Well, it turns out that this county clerk has decided to have teams work 4 hours because they know human beings just get tired, and you start inverting numbers and not counting as well. And those are some of the reasons. And I think that maybe that's what we do is be ready and continue to tell people there might not be, there's no fraud going on because it's these results are coming later.
Mhm.
Because
Potentially
people are
changing.
tired. We think that the poll workers have been up since 4:30. Well, so have election officials. So has the Secretary of State. So has the county clerk. And that's just not one day. They've been working
Exactly.
late all these weeks beforehand, and the stress. And then think about added to the stress of getting the ballot out, getting it correct, getting it to the overseas voters, getting absentee ballots. Oh, and then by the way, we're going to kill you. I mean, right?
Right.
I mean, that's what they're faced with too, walking outside in the dark.
These people are heroes.
Right,
They really are.
right.
Thanks, Annette. I think we're going to turn it to people in the room, and then we can come back around if we have time to you. Are there people in the room that have a question? Otherwise, I'll go back to the online question.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Drisana. I'm an MPP student. I was wondering if you could talk a little about, sometimes I worry, even in states with a lot of these reforms that do hold pretty good nonpartisan elections, that sometimes there's a culture of like it's still hard to implement things effectively and fairly because culturally it's an incumbent running against someone new, or folks just feel like the election administrators, when faced with these decisions in real time, even if they have the legal backing, it just may be hard in a very, very polarized world. And so I was wondering if you had any thoughts on how we can culturally make sure we are executing correctly on a lot of these amazing reforms that we need to make.
I'm trying to think of a state. I always need examples.
Are we talking about certain northeastern states?
Yeah, so I can just like
Which state?
New Jersey,
New York, yeah.
and
So like I work on campaigns in New York.
Oh.
And yeah, and you, the answer could also be
I'm
we're so
answering
far
for you.
away, but I do the states you brought up, Arizona, Texas, like I think we go there, but there's so many problems everywhere that I'm sure you know better than me. And I was just curious, how can we just culturally be better about what voting means and how we behave when we vote? Yeah.
I think when people like, there are many states that I look at, like Vermont, for instance. They went to no excuse voting during the pandemic, and then they stuck with it like that. what was the other? Nevada, they're still struggling with that. New York, that is an interesting
Oh,
one.
yes.
Because I'll tell you this, this is the fun one. I like, if there were innovative things that could take place with business and elections, I was on it as Secretary of State. I always felt that the office was constitutional office. It was small enough to try pilot projects and things like that. And so I went to testify in front of legislature. It wasn't in Albany, but it was down, in the city. And they were having, some hearings there. And it took forever for me to ever get my turn to testify in front of these assemblymen. And this elected official says something about what, because I was going to tell them, we have early voting, we have online voter registration, we got automatic voter, like I was going to go through all these things that we had done. We're with Eric, we're with all of these things. And before I even had a chance to get up there, he's like West Virginia even has this, and it's not like they're the bastion of progress. And here I am sitting back here. So I couldn't wait to get up there and say, I'm the former Secretary of State of West Virginia, the bastion of, because New York didn't have it. So
Yeah?
yes, you're right.
Okay.
I experienced that. And even we're working with them now to try to get automatic voter registration. It's finally passed there to finally get it implemented. I think we just keep showing the positivity, but that's the problem. Here's 2020. We're supposed to be where you're saying that we should be in 2022, but we don't get to be because we have to fight it back here. I mean, what would you say about that?
No, I think that's right. And I think, just
Change of
because I'm
culture.
from New York, as just someone knows, that, there is, a lot of it is incumbency protection, and it becomes more about maintaining one's own power than actually trying to advocate for voters. And so you do have that. In some states, a colleague of mine in New Jersey talks about this all the time, that if Democrats, let's say in blue states, fought as hard for democracy reforms as Republicans in deep red states fought for voter suppression laws, the voting systems would be awesome, but it's just not.
Well, I mean, and it's like in West Virginia, and this is where Tova, like she didn't mention when she said she saw what I was up against. Sometimes it's up against the county clerks, and they were Democrat county clerks. And they just didn't want to do it.
Well, that's it too, right?
And that's the case, and I get the New England states where the cities run the elections and not a county. I get that, but I was facing from my own party who just didn't want to do it. And then they were able to get to that new DMV commissioner before I did. And that's why the DMV never showed up to the AVR meetings.
I didn't take it personally, but yes, that's right. Yeah, no, I
And
think that,
that's,
I mean, there's a human, I think, resistance to change, right, to doing anything new. But I think in election administration, and especially, given what's going on now, I mean, who can blame them? That it's what you always have to have in every meeting around elections of, what is it? God grant me having no close
the
elections,
serenity,
or
yeah.
the serenity of having no close
is that
elections.
what you could do? Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of it's, I think we have time for like one more question that I can take. Go ahead, Olivia.
Hi, I'm Olivia. Thanks for being here. So my question, it kind of goes back to what Annette was saying earlier, and to some of your points of transparency, something that I've been really wrestling with and struggling with, because I know we keep saying like, if election deniers get in, but I'm going to kind of put like a when on it. I know I know sometimes when they get in the system, they do the whole, oh, there was no problem, I won, but that doesn't necessarily fix the distrust in the communities around. And in some cases, I feel like if there was an election denier that got elected in my community, I might also start to lose distrust, kind of growing the problem. So how do we wrestle with that? Because I feel like when these people get in, it exacerbates the problem in more ways than just one. And I'm sorry, that's a big whopper for the last question.
That is, because we are going to have questions. Like in West Virginia, our Secretary of State, and the transparency is he beat me, I ran against him again, and he beat me again. But in 2020, certified the state elections and 3 hours later was on the Capitol grounds at a Stop the Steal rally. Like, how disheartening is that?
Very.
I mean, it's like, oh, the elections are wonderful, but somebody stole them over here. And he continues on it even when he has talked to the former Secretary of State of Pennsylvania that he accuses of wrongdoing. What do we do? I mean, like I feel like I'm facing it now, somewhat in my state. And there are times I don't feel responsible for it, but I feel responsible for making sure we voice it. And you cannot do it alone. You do it with like a coalition, like we were able to fight back Senate Bill 565 in West Virginia. What would make you feel? I mean, that's I'm looking for help in.
Yeah, Olivia, help us.
I mean, it would just be transparent. And what,
Seriously.
you know, what I will do is continue to do, you know, a 1-minute video saying what the process was. And that's what I did after the election of 2020, even after I lost. You know, I still said, this is what's taking place. We now have election night was unofficial results. There's still this opportunity for mail-in ballots to come in. Then they have to be in by the time that canvassing starts in the county. Just that explanation, and maybe show it.
Yeah, so something that you said earlier about some of the bipartisanship that you were able to get done. Of course, I always like to, and I feel like a lot of people at the Kennedy School really like that answer and that progress. I mean, the 2020 election, Kentucky is home for me, so other side of the mountain from you, from my sticker. And so I really applauded the governor's, who's a Democrat, and then the Secretary of State's reforms together. But there's pushback against that for this year, even though they're still in place. But for how long? I don't know. So that, again, it's something that I'm like, I want people to work together. I want us to fight to make our democracy better. But I question now if democracy is a value that some people even hold anymore in this country, because we have a lot of people even questioning that aspect of it. And so I feel like my distrust of like someone who is an election denier comes in, and the system would be a different distrust than people are like, oh, I don't even think democracy should be a thing.
Yeah.
So it's not really an answer, but something
I
I'm thinking
think about. I told you I was a former television reporter in West Virginia, so we're the small local markets like Kentucky, except for maybe Louisville or Lexington. But we need to educate those reporters, and they don't necessarily have enough time. They're out having to bring in 4 stories. But I think that becomes part of the problem, because you say, oh, okay, we're general assignment reporter, go do this story about elections. We're 2 weeks away. So they go to the Secretary of State's office and they get that story, and they don't know the counter question to ask. They don't know the follow-up question. They just get it. Okay, thank you. I would be like, you're talking about confidence in elections, but you're the one hurting our confidence by saying the elections were stolen. Like, that's but they don't do that.
Right.
Because then they can't get a story, or that Secretary of State's communications director calls their boss. And I mean, that's what a problem is for reporting. And then the national news is called the fake news.
Yeah, I mean, that is where the local media really does come into play, and trying to work with local media maybe more to try and get the right information out.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that's one small thing we can talk of, we can say we came up with here. I think we're out of time. We are out of time. We're past time. But thank you so much, Secretary Natalie
Oh, you're
Tennant,
welcome. Thank you.
current fellow at
This is-
IOP. Thank you so much. And thank you all
Good.
for coming, and thanks everybody who joined